Okay, so Emma and I are going to have a chat about lots of different topics over the next couple of weeks. The idea for this came about because Emma was on the Begin Your Healing Group program with me a year ago. And then once she stabilized and started working for herself in marketing for like freelancing for other people, she also started helping me out too with marketing and content ideas. And we realized that she would actually be amazing at chatting and interviewing me. And with this particular chat, we're going to focus on my personal story, but other topics that we're going to cover are kind of more educational based over the next couple of weeks. So, Emma, if you want to just like introduce yourself a little bit and then feel free to get into like asking me all about my story.
Cool. Thank you so much, first of all, for doing this with me. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to talk to you about all of these very pertinent issues for anyone with IBD. This is the kind of podcast that I wish I had had when I first got diagnosed. So, just briefly, my name's Emma. I'm from South Africa. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2021 in SA. I moved to the UK shortly afterwards, got into the medical system over here in this country, very different between the two countries. I had quite a difficult journey since then with a lot of surgeries and hospitalizations. Managed to find Rachel through social media in 2023 Instagram. I've never been more grateful for social media than I have in that moment. And as she said, yeah, 2024, I did her January Begin Your Healing program. And that is where my story completely transformed and the journey into holistic healing began. And here we are today, still exploring and navigating all of those very interesting topics. So, Rachel, I am so fascinated with your story because you were diagnosed so young, much younger than when I first started getting symptoms and signs of Crohn's disease. And I think that that's something that makes you so powerful as an expert and as a coach, is because you've been living with this and navigating it for sort of your whole life almost. And you've really navigated the full spectrum of it. So, like from not knowing anything as a kid through to growing into your young adult years with it in the medical model, all the way through to coming out of the medical model and into this holistic space. So you're just a wealth of knowledge in this whole journey. So I would love to just start maybe at the very beginning. So if you could tell us a little bit more about when did IBD start for you, or how did it start for you?
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I mean, my memory can be a little bit foggy around this because I was 8, but from memory, I developed chronic stomach pain around that age. And I remember being like crippled with pain on the sofa, lost my appetite, couldn't really fully describe to my parents what was going on. Like initially, they thought it was just something minor that would resolve itself within a week or two, but it ended up going on for months, and they brought me to lots of different pediatricians. And like the reality of my environment was that at home, family life was very like chaotic and it was not exactly peaceful. They were going through their own stuff. I also had, at the time, had two younger sisters, and then years down the line, another younger brother. But so there was three kids in the house. So it was a really intense environment. They were going through a separation. So in hindsight now, I can see that I was very stressed, like extremely stressed, couldn't really process my emotions about what was going on environmentally with my family, particularly just my two parents. So it doesn't surprise me that not being able to process those emotions and not understanding what was going on in terms of the family dynamic fragmenting, because they did separate and then divorce. So I'm really not surprised now with what I know about the mind gut connection and mental health that I manifested physical symptoms because I couldn't
Mm.
process my emotions or just what was going on mentally. So the hospital that I was in for most of my life was Crumlin Hospital in Dublin. And when they eventually diagnosed me, like a lot of GPs and GI doctors firstly said I was just looking for attention and I was being dramatic. That was actually really hard to hear as a child, looking for
I am
attention. I
shocked.
know, I know. It
Oh
was
my gosh.
it was horrible because they felt like I just wanted my parents to really double down on like giving me attention. And I'll never forget when that was said to me. And then they just started kind of they did recommend a child counselor, which was helpful because that counselor, I remember vaguely did highlight that I was like stressed and trying to process what was going on for me. So that kind of took a bit of the heat off them saying I was just looking for attention. Um, and then as I started like rapidly losing weight and just being like so teeny tiny for my age and looking so gaunt and like really bony, the GI doctors were just funneling meds at me. So a lot of cortisol or prednisolone is really what it's called. And then eventually they put me on not a biologic drug because they only came out in the last couple of years, but it was a drug called 6-mercaptopurine, which is actually a drug that's used for transplants, like liver and kidney transplants to help your immune system, but they were also using it for Crohn's and colitis patients too. So it's still an immunomodulator drug, but it was very strong, and the side effects were crazy on that drug. And also my growth got stunted because I was like in those growing years. So because of both pred and 6MP, I didn't grow to the height that I was apparently meant to grow to. My younger sister is actually way taller than me. Like I'm 5'4", 5'5", so I'm not tiny, but she's like 5'8" or 9, I think. So that
Oh
was
wow.
another, yeah, that was another side effect of taking those drugs so young.
I had no idea about all of this. So did they officially know that you had Crohn's disease in those early years?
Yeah, they diagnosed me at about 12 months of like pain and being a
Okay.
drama queen. So it took about a year to get the diagnosis. And with my bloods, like, they went through the usual crack of your bloods are fine, it's just inflammation, it's probably just something like an infection you'll move through. So yeah, I did get the official diagnosis for Crohn's disease within a year. And from then, I was just in and out of Crumlin Hospital on meds, getting bloods done regularly because they have to monitor your bloods. And yeah, that's kind of where it all began. So I was suddenly slapped with this label as like a young kid.
Oh my gosh, that is a lot more nuanced than I had any knowledge of. I can't believe that story. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's two thoughts that come to mind now for me. So, number one, like what an injustice that it took them so long to actually take it seriously that, this child actually has something going on. And then you kind of think, well, if they had, taken it seriously sooner, maybe things would have been different. But actually, no, because there was no other alternative route that that medical model would have followed for you. They just would have put you on those same drugs sooner, if they hadn't have delayed it. So that is very problematic for children. And now hearing about all these other side effects that come with those drugs when they're so young, that is shocking to me, and that's really concerning. Um, so you spent quite a while on those drugs, growing up in that system, sort of growing up around doctors telling you it's incurable, you're going to have to be on these things for the rest of your life. So my next question would be sort of when did you really start to question that, or when did you start to get skeptical about how you were being treated? Yeah, what point in your sort of very early years, or did it happen later, did you start to wonder those things?
Yeah, I mean, it was around 16, 17 when I started getting skeptical because I was on Pred, which is a steroid that many people get put on for an autoimmune condition. I was on that maybe once a year, every single year, sometimes more than once. And like Pred has serious side effects. So I remember once I hit around 17, I started getting very skeptical about the doctors saying the same thing over and over. I was like, this is like they're either brainwashed or they have a script, like I became very wise to it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I also just like didn't understand why I was like popping these pills, and I didn't understand what was going on. So I remember asking my dad if I could go to a couple of different gastro doctors in Dublin, because I was convinced that the ones I was with, because I was moved into Vincent's hospital, which is like the adult, you have to go into the adult hospital at some point. And so I researched all the other hospitals in Dublin and one also in Drogheda, the Lourdes, which is just like maybe an hour north of Dublin. And I organized appointments with about 5 or 6 different GI doctors because I was like, Dad, like I'm convinced now there's like somebody who will give me some other alternative to this. Like they can't all be saying the same thing. So my dad
Mm.
came with me for all the appointments and he was kind of like nearly smug, like watching his like 17-year-old just interrogate these old men, like because they're all kind of 40s to 60s. It was pretty much all men. I don't think I came across one female consultant. And
Wow.
yeah, I'd interrogate them and they'd all say the same thing. No, they were like, no, your body's attacking you. You're on meds for the rest of your life. Um, and they were kind of like getting into the whole, oh, biologic logics are coming out soon, so we can move you off 6-MP and you can start injecting yourself. And I was like, oh my God, this is way more depressing than I thought it would be. Like I was really hoping somebody would have something else to say about my options. And then there was one of the last people that I went to in Dublin, his name is Professor O'Moran, and he said, he was like, I actually feel sorry for you. Like you have been stuck on these meds for so long. So I'm gonna take you off everything because I can see that you're like losing the plot being stuck on all of this stuff. And we'll see how you get on. But he didn't give me any plan. But I was so grateful
Mm.
like that he didn't force me to stay on them. And I didn't have the strength or the awareness at that age to just stop taking them because I was so fear mongered. Like
Yeah.
I was terrified and I didn't know why I was on them or what I would do if I came off them. So he just let me stop them and I was fine for a year. And then I had a really bad flare, but he didn't do anything in terms of like teaching me how to dive into like the root of healing. He just felt sorry for me and he was like, just take a chance, see how you get on. And I was fine for 12 months and then had a really bad flare. So that's kind of where the skepticism came in. And after that I really noticed, okay, this is not like, this is just flying on one wing, taking chances, taking stabs in the dark. And then as I got older, I'd say more like 23-ish. I did continue to do the usual conventional medical protocol within that time frame, but around my early mid 20s, that was really where I started properly on like questioning and researching what I can do outside of meds. So yeah, that's kind of what went on around then.
Okay. So those 12 months that you were fine, was that you didn't have any symptoms at all, or they were just sort of manageable for you? And then did you notice that when you had that flare, was there again some sort of external um, incident or influence that caused the flare, like some sort of stressor, or was it just the same stress from childhood that had now like remanifested a year later?
I definitely was just managing symptoms. I would say I had minor IBD symptoms, kind of more
Okay.
like IBS type symptoms, nothing
Yeah.
chronic or dire. And then with regard to flaring, it's still a bit foggy, but I would have been doing final exams around then, like it's
Mm.
called a leaving cert here. So I would have been doing them. And then in terms of stress, like I was just a very anxious child and teenager, didn't know how to manage my emotions. Also had a lot of like anger and resentment towards like the messiness of just the way family dynamics were. So that all was definitely pent up on my body. And it doesn't surprise me that I was struggling with chronic gut issues because I didn't have any like mentor to help me move through or heal or process all of the anxiety. So I would imagine that would have been a core reason why I flared again, as well as those exams.
Yeah, it's quite a common theme that a lot of people with IBD say is that it started when their symptoms started when they were in like exams or something in university. Quite a few people, that's when it starts for them. That's really interesting. Like I have such a similar story where my parents also got divorced when I was about 8 years old, and it was the same sort of, just really family dynamics. Stable. Okay.
Okay. So
So
you were saying when you were 12.
yeah, so that's when the symptoms like really started manifesting, and then I just thought that that was a normal part of life and that everybody felt that way. So when people would ask me, how I am, I never thought to say, oh, I'm actually, struggling with this symptom, because I thought that that was normal. So I'd always say I was fine. So then I think it's really hard for people to suddenly think of you as being chronically ill, because before that, in my situation, it's a bit different to yours, but before that, you would never really say, or they would never really know that something was brewing. But it really does brew for a while before you get to that point where it becomes, a really dire situation like it did for me. And I think that's where a lot of people are not paying attention to their bodies enough to know this is not normal. I shouldn't be feeling this way. So they just carry on and on and on. And then it spirals further and further out of control until they're sitting with this massive thing that is in front of them that's really difficult to climb.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I see this pattern in so many people, whether they're like teenagers or they're moms and they're just at the point of burnout before they really pay attention to what's going on. And even with myself, I went very kind of feisty in my mid 20s and started contacting every doctor I went to for all of my records because I was just
Right.
like, yeah, I was trying to gather information. So I remember when I got the giant, like, thick book of records from Crumlin Children's Hospital, which I would have been in for like nearly a decade. I analyzed the bloods and I had a H. pylori infection when I was like just diagnosed.
Whoa.
Yeah, so if they had highlighted that infection and they treated that, there's a chance I wouldn't have exacerbated anyway, you know?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this so much bigger than what they tell us, like your body's just attacking you.
Yeah,
That's just such a cop out. Like you are always saying, it's such a cop out, and it is. That is
yeah.
crazy. Like how many of us, if they were to properly investigate us, would show things like that, other things going on in the background, which is exactly what you look for in your blood
Yeah.
analysis.
Totally, yeah. Like there's always root cause triggers, and I'm just so grateful that I was in like the darkness of the medical model. And for me, the darkness of it meant having to take these meds, having to get colonoscopies, emergencies as well, where I'd have to go into
Mm,
A&E because I like fainted because I was too thin and the steroids weren't working. Like I'm so glad I witnessed the darkness of it because it really pushed me into trying to understand root cause triggers. And that's what I feel like I'm so adamant about now. Like I'm
yeah.
35 in a few weeks and like I was diagnosed when I was 8. So it's just amazing that like I was pushed to understand root cause investigation because like root causes are that exactly like H. pylori or chronic vitamin D deficiency or mental and emotional stuff that isn't looked at and processed. So yeah, I think like even though my story was tough and a lot of people really relate to it because they've gone through it too, I'm just so grateful for the whole journey because like the amount of people that I can empower and help now is like incredible.
Yeah. That brings me to my next question. So, going from being in the medical model, then you became skeptical, looking for other alternatives, asking the doctors, and not really getting anything or getting any further. So, how did your mindset change between relying solely on the medical model and investigating the holistic and sort of making that switch into the holistic? And did you have any influences in your life, or like any specific voices that helped you to make that change in mindset from only relying on the doctors to now exploring this alternative way?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, the trigger for me going on to the holistic path was I reacted to Humira. So that's for anyone who doesn't know, it's like a biologic drug that you inject. And I was mid-20s when they took me off 6MP, put me on Humira, and I was flaring at the time. It was a pretty bad flare, but I began getting very skeptical and I started studying nutritional therapy and I was working in health stores for like years, gathering information about supplements, food, and then studying NT as well. I was just learning a lot about the science of like the body and all of that, but I still wasn't like on the holistic path. And I remember having that big flare in my mid 20s, being put on Humira, and I had to do 4 injections every 2 weeks. So one in each thigh and one in each side of my stomach. And then that would taper down over time. Or that was the intention. I was so scared doing these injections because I just popped pills my whole life between Pred
Mm,
and 6MP. So I remember I'd like sit on the side of the bed about to inject and I'd just be bawling, crying, like not understanding why I'm now on these injections and what are they? What are these chemicals going into my body? And I had nobody to go to because I only really knew the medical model and there was nobody in my life who had done anything outside of medicine. Like my grandmother was
mm.
living with UC and she was on strong meds for ulcerative colitis, and anyone else I knew in my life was on meds for something. Nobody had got kind of gone the alternative route. So after a couple of days of taking Humira, my whole body seized up. I couldn't bend my knees fully. I couldn't bend out my arms straight. I couldn't hold a pen because my knuckles and my fingers wouldn't like release. And my neck was really stiff. So like any kind of all where the joints move basically stiffened up. And it was just so obvious that it was nothing other than Humira. Like there's no way it could be anything.
Yeah.
Um so I rang the GI doctor and he said, "Oh no, a lot of IBD patients develop rheumatoid arthritis. That's what's happened to you. You've just developed it." And he was like,
Oh my gosh.
I
Like
know,
overnight. It's
I
fine.
know, I know. What a man, like. And he was like, "I'm going to refer you to the RA consultant upstairs in like Vincent's Hospital." And I was like, "Hold on a minute." So I started researching Humira, and they give it to RA patients. So I was like, "This is ridiculous. It's an immunomodulator for rheumatoid arthritis or IBD or lots of other conditions that are like autoimmune based, where your body's like attacking you and your inflammation has gone through the roof." So I was like, "Oh no, I'm done with this GI doctor. Like I can't be dealing." And then somebody in the health store saw that I was desperate and like tired and fed up from the medical model. And they were like, "Go to this GP in Dublin. He's an acupuncturist." So I went to him and did a few sessions with him. I remember I didn't have a huge amount of money, so I actually went to his classes. He teaches acupuncture. His name's like Dr. Vincent Carroll, and he has these like Saturdays where all the students are there, maybe 20 students, and then they bring in people. And so I used to go every Saturday for a couple of weeks because it was free. And then eventually I just
Oh
started
well.
going. Yeah, it was so helpful as somebody like in my mid 20s and, not earning a huge amount. And also I was sick, so I couldn't earn much either.
Mm.
So that helped massively because he's a GP. So he looked at all of my records and then he was doing acupuncture on me and teaching me a lot about like how my body was like kind of shutting down because of the medication in particular, but also he highlighted that I hadn't looked at mental health at all, mental emotional health at all. He was like, "I can see that you're harboring specific emotions." It was mainly frustration from memory and I think one or two others. So going to him, and then I started going to one of his students regularly for private sessions. And he also said to me, like, you really need to start learning about mindfulness and mental health and being really aware of what's going on in your mind because it's it's totally linked to what's going on for you with Crohn's disease. And I said to him, like, I'm not taking Humira again. I'm not taking anything. I'm just turning my back on the medical model. Like, I'm so done. And he was like, well, it's always there for you anyway. I mean, like, if you're really stuck, it'll always be there. But he totally agreed with my stance. He could see that I was desperate, and he was just willing to be supportive, even though it was more the woman, one of the women in his kind of students that I started going to. She was very encouraging and supportive throughout me doing even the first year away from the medical model. So that was like the catalyst for me. Like, it was terrifying not being able to walk properly or extend my arms out or my legs out. My whole body just felt like it shut down. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm done. I can't be putting these chemicals in my body anymore. Like, there has to be another way. And luckily I knew a lot about nutrition there, because I think I was in year two of nutritional therapy, and I had learned tons about nutrition and supplements and herbs within the health stores, because I'd say I did 3 years in the health stores around then. So I kind of had that foundation, which was really helpful too. So yeah, that's how that all kind of set me onto the holistic path.
Okay, wow. That experience with Humira, I can't even, like, I shudder when I think about having to go through that. That must have been really, really terrifying. Even worse than, I think, sometimes having to go into hospital or have surgery, because in that situation you're completely on your own, like, and there's nobody who's looking at you, and if you want help you have to really, like, fight for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
And even then, they're not particularly, like, nobody's going to be rushing to try and find an alternative, you know what I mean.
That doctor was rushing to send me up to the RA consultant upstairs. That he just wanted me off his hands, like,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And not all doctors are like that, but I didn't have any good consultants, in fairness. But some people do have nice ones, you know.
Mm. So that fear mongering that you mentioned earlier, like, that is definitely, well, the theme of fear is very big in any IBD patient's journey, which I think starts long before, in my opinion, it starts long before the IBD actually manifests, emotional and trauma, in the life before. That also is fear-based. And then it just kind of gets compounded once you are thrown into this medical model and into this really stressful health situation. And then the doctors are just confirming again and again, everything that they tell you, or at least in my case, the narrative that they were telling me was, it's incurable. You can't cure this. You can only manage it. You will likely need surgery in your life. It's very likely that you might need to have a stoma one day. Your lifespan will be shortened. Food has nothing to do with it. Like, really just pushing you into a corner where you feel like there is absolutely nothing you can do that's going to change the situation in any way.
Hmm.
So my question is, did you feel that fear, and how would you sort of help somebody to work through that fear so that they can go on the holistic path? Because I know with me, it was a big barrier initially. I was so fearful of going against the medical model, or of leaving the medical model entirely. I've come a long way, but there is still some fear that I need to work through even now. So is there any sort of statement or tip or anything you can say to somebody who's maybe battling that fear at the moment, who really wants to get to the other side, but the fear is currently holding them back?
Yeah, I definitely experienced that fear too. And what I usually say to people who start with me and they're moving through that fear is, firstly, it's honestly easier for people when they've seen and experienced and built up some evidence about how meds aren't working well for them, or their doctors are dismissive, or their doctors aren't digging. That helps, because no amount of what I will say will convince anyone unless they've experienced everything you just listed there. Everything.
Mm,
But then what I would say to people who are moving through the fear is that, like, it's important to remember that the medical model is in cahoots with Big Pharma, and Big Pharma is a business. Yes, they do save lives through various different meds, but they are absolutely not here to find out what the root cause triggers are for Crohn's or colitis in particular. They've been like saying that they're researching that for donkey's years, and they're still just like firing out all these new meds. Like, I feel like the newest ones are like Rinvoq and Skyrizi now. Like, they're just focused on that. And I really feel like a lot of IBD patients in particular hold out hope that pharma is going to find out what the root of this is. But it's important to just remember that they're a business, like a multi-billion dollar business. Doctors are trained in a band-aid approach. So they're not trained to dig into what's going on for you, and particularly the mental and emotional connection of what's going on for you. They're really trained to ensure you stay alive, really. Like, it's like
Mm.
survival. So they're going to naturally throw meds at you to like try and improve your quality of life, but they're not at all trained in focusing on the root of what's going on from a physical side and a mental emotional side too. And when you're living with this fear about like coming away from the medical model and just learning about the holistic path and more like root level investigations, it's natural that you're going to feel like you're turning your back on the experts, because they
Mm.
are viewed as like the experts that are like that we should take everything they say verbatim and that everything they say is correct. But you're a sovereign human who has way more complexities going on than just your body's attacking you and you need to throw pred and a biologic drug at your body and hope for the best and do it for the rest of your life, and hopefully you'll be grand. Like, you're way more complex than that. There's like shock and grief are the two biggest themes I see in people who develop a chronic gut condition, and also self-neglect as well. A lot of people neglect um the signals that their body is giving them. So, yeah, I guess, I mean, this is a roundabout way of answering your question, but it's not as simple as what they're saying. There's way more to it, and it's natural to be fearful, but it's also helpful to manage that fear slowly so that you're not like taking a massive risk, like taking yourself off meds suddenly with no foundation. Like, I would never recommend anyone to start weaning themselves off meds unless they've done the foundation that I teach, like in BYH or in the Freedom Seekers program, where we hone in on blood investigations first and then nutrition and repairing the lining of the gut wall. Like, all of those foundations help you become more confident in your body and less fearful about pulling away from the medical model and particularly the meds. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does, and that actually gives me a thought now. So, um, I think some people out there perceive the holistic path as a mutually exclusive option from the medical model. So they think you either do one or you do the other, and there's no overlap. But I think that's a big misconception. So going the holistic path, it's you kind of have to view things in a much bigger context. So we're, as society and from when we're younger, we're trained to view the medical model as the whole of health. So everything health related, you look at the medical model as the expert, the place to find the help that you need. And if they don't have the answers, nobody does. But that is actually wrong, because the holistic path encompasses the medical model. So the holistic path is everything plus what medicine can do for the body, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So I think it's important. I think for me, I'm also talking to myself here, is to remind ourselves that the medical model is only one part of the story, and we need to broaden our view to look at the whole part of the story, which includes our childhoods, our traumas, our emotional struggles, the emotions that we haven't processed yet, like you were saying, that are stored in the body. The body keeps the score. It's also including our nutrition, it's including our energy, it's including our spirituality, our physical activity, everything. So that's really helped me is to when I came across you and when I did your course, I realized how much bigger everything was. And so that's really helped me to reduce the fear because I'm now looking at the medical model in a much more balanced perspective. So they are one part of the story. I have the rest of the story that I need to work on in my own time that they can't help me with, but they're not mutually exclusive. So you can still be on the drugs and do your course. In fact, doing your course and making the changes that you teach people whilst they're on drugs would actually give the drugs a chance of working better than they would if they didn't do anything and only relied on the drugs. So I think that can help a lot of people where they think, oh, if I do this, I can't do the medical model. No, you can still be involved with your IBD team while you're learning the holistic approach. And then when you get to that point of feeling, okay, I think I have enough tools in my toolkit to sort of take this further without my IBD team, like always being there without being on drugs, then you can move into that.
Yeah, so well said, Emma, honestly. And I think for me, I love teaching people to not rely on one thing. And meds can be this kind of like miracle that people feel like will resolve everything for them with regard to their symptoms, or they're just putting all of their hope into this one thing, and it's just so important for everyone to zoom out and take a step back and look at what's going on and what has been going on pre-diagnosis too, because it will really show you what attention your body needs from lots of different angles, like what we discussed with nutrition, mental health, spiritual health, everything, and that's important because it really is delusional for any of us to believe that this one thing, this medication is going to solve everything. And it's because we're conditioned by the medical model to believe that.
Mm.
But it's definitely my job to ensure that that isn't a part of people's reality going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one last point before I get to my last question. So, you said that you had that doctor who taught you acupuncture and he was holistic focused and he sort of helped you to get into that path. I think that's so important for anybody battling IBD who wants to move into the holistic approach, but who isn't investing in any sort of help. So the help is actually the thing that's going to take you into the next stage. You can't do it alone. That's what I had to learn the hard way. I tried to do it by myself. I tried to just look at all the Instagram people. I tried to piece together all these different conflicting ideas. Tried to do it on my own. Once I'd had my eyes open through one book, the book wasn't enough. I needed that person, that other human being who I can go to with questions, who can also give me a different perspective. They will see things in my life that I will miss. So you really need to invest in that person that you trust who can take you into the holistic approach a much safer way and much more successfully than you ever would be able to do on your own without any knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really heartbreaking to see the time that slips away when people don't
Mm.
do that. I know some people have financial struggles and they can't invest in somebody, but it's amazing how, like, within 3 to 6 months of having somebody give you attention and map out exactly what needs to be done and what's relevant for you, because with blood work, like, it's going to be different for everyone, especially the way I analyze bloods. But within 3 to 6 months, your whole life can be completely transformed, and you have a framework that you can rinse and repeat and become even more like connected to your body so that this doesn't happen again, like flares, meds, whatever it is. And if you don't do that, time can slip away. It can be 2, 3 years where you're not getting too far, or you're mentally losing it because you feel like you can go 6 months with no flare and then you have a flare and you're trying to understand everything. And it's really just, yeah, it's heartbreaking to watch people go through that. So yeah,
Mm,
I love what you said about that, because I really value freedom and time, and I just love that my life isn't hyper focused on my health anymore. Like, I have
mm,
solid habits and foundations in place that I don't need to be like meticulously breaking down. Why have I got this symptom? Like, I just can live my life and do other things that are, way more enjoyable for me, instead of
mm.
having to like be self reflective about what's going on for me all the time. And that freedom is really important, because I love traveling and I love being around people like in my life, friends, and just putting all my attention in that, like those areas instead, like that I value. And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people who come and work with me do value freedom too, and they don't want to be wasting their time like gathering dribs and drabs of information from different places and not actually making a dent in their health and truly healing on like a root level.
Yeah, absolutely. You're living the dream, just by the way.
Thank you.
I'm hoping to get there one day. After Freedom Seekers now in May with you, hopefully I'll be even further along to living that way.
Totally,
Uh,
yeah, we'll refine what's going on for you.
so my last question is, why did you decide to start coaching and helping others? Because it would have been very easy for you to, once you'd regained your health, to just continue living your life very happily, doing whatever else. So is there a specific reason that you do what you do today?
I honestly feel like it's my life path and purpose to do it. And I mean, I studied nutritional therapy and then I studied functional blood chemistry analysis. And there was nothing for me to do other than coach people with those two qualifications. There was no way I was going to go into some like, I don't know, nutritional company and advise on nutritional products or whatever. Like, I just know
Yeah.
so much about personal journeys and the body. And I just really knew that the biggest impact I would make would be one to one or in groups with people, and taking them through the process that I take them through and out of the medical model. And I feel like the core um thing that I teach is about reconnecting you with your body, so that this shock doesn't happen where you suddenly get slapped with this label of Crohn's or colitis or any chronic
Mm.
condition. So yeah, it really comes down to like purpose and life path for me. And it's just so fulfilling to do this. And especially because I've seen what's gone on for me. So I really, like, I don't doubt that everyone can do this. I really just know for certain that it's possible. Some cases are a little bit more complex if they've had like a lot of bowel resections, or they're on like a permanent stoma. But either way, there's a huge amount of healing that can happen. And that to me is just so fulfilling and empowering. So yeah, I think it's life purpose.
Awesome perspective. You are so good at this, and it really is very clear that you were made to do this. You have like all the right skills and the right strengths to take people on this journey and to do it successfully. And thank you so much for how you've done that for me.
Thank you, Emma. You're such a dote. And actually, another reason is like I love all the woo-woo stuff as well, like astrology and
Yeah,
human design.
I
And
wanted
when
you to get this. Maybe you can
Oh, you
on it
broke up
now.
there. You broke up there. Sorry, what did you say?
Sorry, I wanted you to some of this stuff on the course, so maybe you could briefly just touch on it now.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm gonna start teaching more about the woo-woo stuff, and like definitely in the course too. But when I learned about astrology and human design, I really realized like, oh my goodness, I'm totally meant to be doing this for various reasons. But with human design, I'm a 6-2 projector, which is really about like being a role model and teaching and guiding and mentoring. And then with my astrology as well, it's really obvious too that I'm meant to be doing this, particularly around like helping people reconnect with their body, regardless of what they have going on for them. So yeah, the woo-woo stuff I love as well, because it really validated for me, like, oh yeah, I'm grand. Like, I'm totally on the right path, and
Yeah,
that's lovely.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your questions and your enthusiasm. Honestly, it's been so nice to like be able to finally get my story out in as much detail as possible.
Yeah.
And I just love how focused you are in your own journey. Like I know we'll record a chat with you and about like your story and what's gone on for you. We'll do that soon. But yeah, thank you for today. You're such a gem.
Oh, you're so welcome. This was so much fun, and I honestly really enjoyed getting to know the more complicated details of your journey that like you don't usually share on social media. So that was really interesting, and it's a very tough thing that you've been through. So you are a true inspiration for the rest of us, and definitely a role model for us to look up to. So thank you again.
Thank you, Emma.